Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Verikalpa, Tunturihauta, out January 21st on Scarlet Records. This album has 11 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this the band's third full-length studio album. They are a Finnish folk metal band. As far as this record is concerned, they brought in elements from the two previous albums, merging the sound with the way you construct the record. This album sounds bouncy and it feels bouncy. A lot of ebbs and flows from beginning to end. A record that makes itself feel very engaging, very dynamic, very fluid, very entertaining. In addition to that, they added the title track in the middle of the album, a song that sounds very different and it feels different from everything that came before and everything that comes after. It's a song that's a lot darker, more melancholic, and it changes the eyesight of the listener. It works as a pause, as an intermission, whatever you want to call it. It just breaks the record into two. Now, these two sides of the album are very equal to one another, which overall makes the album very balanced and very cohesive. And it also allows this record not to feel repetitive, even though it repeats a lot of the same elements on both halves. So having that track in the middle that completely changes the soundscape, it completely changes the atmosphere, is the perfect touch in order for the record to keep all of its elements alive and well from one side to the next, and at the same time doesn't feel like you're repeating the same formula song in and song out. Once you get into the soundscape, once again, the album brings together the best elements of the two previous albums. It brings in the folk elements of the first record, an element that really becomes the red line that connects every single track throughout this entire album, and it brings the heaviness and darkness that we saw on their previous record. These two elements were not necessarily balanced in the two previous albums, but they found a way of balancing them out on this record. And I feel like this is the right mixture for this band. You can create an album that is folky, that is bouncy, that is jovial at times, that makes you want to groove, that makes you want to dance, and still be heavy, still be dark, and still be melancholic at times. And that's exactly what this album puts forward as far as the soundscape, as far as the atmosphere, as far as the overall essence that it has. And I think once again, this is really the winning formula for Verikalpa. It makes the record feel a lot more dynamic and not one-dimensional. Now, within that sound, there are three elements that drive the experience for three different reasons. One of them is the folkiness. I already mentioned it, that it's the red line that connects the entire album. It stays consistent in what it gives and it stays consistent in what it does throughout the entire record. So it's a linear approach from beginning to end, one that makes the record feel compact and makes the record feel balanced, and regardless of where the songs are going from a construction perspective, having that folkiness present there always in the same manner really makes you feel comfortable within the listening experience of the album. The other element is the drums. I like the drum sound a lot on this record. Perhaps my favorite drum sound of any album that they have released. It feels a little bit more powerful, it has a little bit more strength, it has a little bit more character and a little bit more soul, and it helps with the depth of the overall experience. One thing I would like to see them change around is what becomes a little bit predictable as far as the drums are concerned. They always feel heavier, more powerful, more substantial in the second half of the songs versus the first half. You start to notice this after a while, and that takes a little bit of the luster away from the tracks themselves. It doesn't take anything away from the quality of the drums, but it does have a slight negative impact on how you're going to perceive these tracks going forward. It starts to feel a little bit repetitive from that perspective. On the other side, you have the guitars. The guitars on this album offer a wide range of sounds and experiences. Sometimes they pair up more with the folky nature of the record. Sometimes they pair up with a little bit more of the dark side of the album and the heavy side of the album that we see coming from the drums. So this ability to fluctuate between one and the other, it's one of the elements that really gives a heartbeat and gives a lot of life to this album, making the record feel a lot more dynamic, making the record feel a lot more drivable. It just has a lot more strength. It pushes the listener forward at every single turn, and it gives a lot of character to how this album is built. Perhaps out of the three elements that make the pillars of the sound, this is one of the most important ones because it's the one that gives a lot more direction and it changes how you perceive these songs. Vocally, the album is super consistent from beginning all the way to the end. I like the range, I like the style, I like when he pushes those last few words a little bit deeper with a little bit more power, with a little bit more aggression, a little bit more intensity. It changes how you perceive the songs and it gives the songs a little bit of an extra kick as far as heaviness is concerned. I also enjoyed some of the backing vocals that are happening within this record because it helps the tracks come alive. It almost gives them a little bit of a hymn vibe, and that's really important for a folky album to have that sense of coming together. It's an important element, and it breaks away from the routine of the vocals being so consistent from top all the way to the bottom. But I really like the aggression, the raspiness, the screaming style of vocals fits the band, fits the sound perfectly, and it fits this album because it really combines well with the darker side, heavier side of the record, but still connects well with the folkier side that the band has. Overall, this is their most complete, most mature album. I was a fan of the two previous records, but each one of those albums felt like it was missing something, and it was really hard to define what that something was. Once you listen to this album and you go back and you listen to those two records, it becomes obvious. The albums were missing what each other had. So this album brings together the best out of those two worlds, puts them together in one single album, allowing it to be, like I said, more mature, more cohesive, a more balanced altogether album, one that has a lot more playability, that's more engaging and therefore more entertaining. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Raivon Kansa, a song that has a great keyboard intro. I just love the way this song starts. The keyboards are phenomenal as they introduce you to the track. It sets off this melodic drive that really becomes the signature of the song itself. It has heavier moments, and the heavier moments of the track expand the footprint of the song, allowing the melody to always come back on top of it and creating these waves, these ebbs and flows that are really important in order for the song to be as impactful as possible. Having some backing vocals in the chorus, it adds power without not having an impact on how the song feels. It doesn't make the song feel heavier. It doesn't really change the dynamic of the track, but it gives more substance to how the vocals are coming across, and it increases the overall volume, making it more impactful in that chorus, more memorable, if you will. This is a song that has verses that are really driven, really to the point, heavier, pushing themselves forward, and then when it gets to the chorus, it becomes a lot more melodic, it becomes a lot more bouncy. Adding some heavy drums into the chorus, at least in the back end of the track, allows the two worlds that finally coming together at one point. So this is a very interesting track, a track that feels like it has two defined roles or two defined momentums within it, but then you start to see them merging as one as you approach the end. I really enjoy this track. Next you have Tunturihauta, the title track of the album, a song that has that dark nature. It feels a lot more melancholic. It comes in the middle of the album. Like I said before, it breaks the record into two. There's no track on this album that sounds remotely like this one, so it's very unique in terms of how it's constructed, in terms of how it sounds, and the atmosphere that it creates. It still has melody in it. It still feels folky. It's just that that melody has a lot of melancholy built into it. So that's the atmosphere that it creates and that permeates throughout the entire song. The way it moves slowly at first. It gains a little bit more volume towards the tailor end of the track, but overall, as it starts to finish, it goes back to the beginning and it starts to have that more slower movement, more introspective movement that really becomes the DNA of the track and the calling card of the song through and through. So you almost forget that there are some moments within it that you feel like the speed is picking up. You totally forget about it. The song just has this slow movement to it, and that is what it stays with you when you're listening to it. Last but not least, you have Taisto, a song that's super energetic. One of the most energetic tracks, if not the most energetic track on this record. It's just bouncy, it's melodic, it's fun, it's folky, it brings everything together, and it stays very linear in its approach. It's a track that doesn't change that much musically and vocally from the verses into the chorus. It stays very compact, it stays very balanced, it stays very fast moving, it has a fun movement to it, it's engaging from that perspective, super folky, and a super fun track all around. I like the fact that it stays consistent. I like the fact that we don't see something that we see in other tracks, which is a gradual progression towards the end of the track becoming slightly heavy, where the drums come in and give the song a little bit more power. This track doesn't do that. It stays very consistent with its original design from beginning to end, but because it has that fun nature to it, because it has that bouncy, folky nature to it, you don't mind the repetition that exists within it and the overall linear approach that it gives. I just love how much fun it is to listen to this song. This is it. This is Verikalpa with Tunturihauta, out January 21st on Scarlet Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.